Greetings and welcome to The Library is Open, a podcast where we discuss technology trends in the library community and the tools we use as librarians every day. I'm your host, Elise, and joining us today is the memeing librarian. Enjoy the show. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Library is Open podcast. I'm very excited because we have a very special guest today, somebody that I have been fangirling over for a long time. So I manage the social media accounts at Bywater Solutions, and there's an account that I follow and like obsessively like all their posts. And you've probably seen me share some of their posts in our stories before. And that is the amazing, the memeing librarian. Welcome.
Hello, hi, how are you? I'm
Good.
feeling great. I'm so happy to be here. This is super exciting. I'm not a huge podcast listener. I like a few, so I hope I do okay on this because I'm not.
Is this your first pod experience?
Yes, it's my first podcast experience. However, I did have a radio show in college, which is somewhat similar to a podcast. So I don't know. So we're gonna have fun, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess let's just dive right in. And could you tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up in the library world and how that journey was?
Yeah. So I have been a avid library user my whole life. I went I have basically been a patron of the library that I currently work at since I was born. And I have just, the library was always like a super safe space for me. I loved it from like day one. It was the space, my mom would always comment that I used to cry whenever I left the library every time and everything. So it was like, this is how I grew up. I absolutely loved it. And then when I became like a little bit of an older teenager, like most older teenagers tend to do, I kind of drifted off. I still loved the library, but I didn't get to the library nearly as often and everything. And then I kind of had a revival of I loved libraries so much when I was in college. And then I had just never even thought about like libraries as like a career option until I had graduated college with a creative writing degree, and I didn't have, creative writing degree, you don't have necessarily an idea of what you're going to do with that. There's not a whole lot of options for that. So I was kind of, free falling for about a year after I graduated. Not really sure what I wanted to do with my life. I worked in a preschool at that point, and I just was kind of all over the place. And then it just kind of clicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I could be like work in a library, I think I would love that. Like I think that would be my ideal job. So I came to the library that I currently work at, and I talked to someone at the desk, and I was like, I know you have to have a degree to get into librarianship and everything, but are there any like non-degree options that are available? And they were all super helpful. The woman that I talked to, her name's Ariane. She still works here, but she was like, this is how I got into it. This is what you can do. She gave me basically a step-by-step guide of like how to get into the library world without necessarily a degree. And it just kind of within the next like month or two, a job opened up and I was able to jump on that. I was so nervous when I first applied to it. And looking back on it, it's like I did not need to be as nervous as I was. Clearly, I was very fit for the job and very passionate about the job, and they would have chosen me. But I was just so excited. So, and then after that, just kind of just went from there. My ultimate goal was to be a children's youth and teen librarian. I wanted to work in the youth and teen department. And a year after I was hired at the library as a page, I was able to become a youth desk associate. So, and I've worked my way up from there. Right now, I'm currently a youth and teen assistant librarian. But it's been a really fun journey, a really fun time. I got into libraries. Oh, when was it? I think not November of 2017. So it's almost almost 6 years now. But yeah, it's been a super fun time. I really have enjoyed it, even when I don't enjoy it. I'm still like, I really am happy to be here, you know. So, but yeah, it's been I've really enjoyed it. I really liked it, and you know, I think it's pretty obvious based on the fact that I run a meme page dedicated to libraries that this is something I'm very passionate about. But it's been fun being able to actually just go into work and be able to show my passions off as what I do for my job. So
All the feels. Like, first of all, I love that you use the library as you were a kid, like the same library you work at, that was your library. I always
yeah,
love when that happens. And then also we have a lot of, I think, listeners that were creative writing majors as well. So love that as well. That's a great.
that's the way it goes for a lot of people. I think I don't know what the connection is there, but I've met a ton of people who are creative writing majors who work in libraries, and I think it's just there's a you know, a lot of people when I was in college would tell me like, "Oh, are you going to be a teacher? Is that like the thought process of what you're doing?" I was like, "I don't really like being a teacher, you know, the idea of being a teacher because it's so like or I don't know, like formulaic, strict, like you have to like adhere to a bunch of these different rules." Um and then once it clicked with the library, I was like, that is like my that's my jam because it's like we can kind of do what we want in the sense of like I can run a creative writing, you know, club, and that's kind of a fun thing. But I don't have to like be with these kids for 8 hours a day, basically. You know, like it's a little bit of a different vibe. Um, and I was homeschooled until high school, so I was very library oriented for that reason. And I don't know, the library fits into that kind of vibe of like kind of free form, do what you want to do, read what you want to read. I'm not going to tell you what to read, kind of, you know, that kind of thing. And it just fit with my personality better. I think it fits with a lot of creative writing major personalities. So
Absolutely. I was also a former going to be a teacher, and that did not happen. And I realized libraries were just the perfect fit. And so,
it fits all the check, you know, like the check marks that you like, and then you don't have to do all of like the other side of like the planning the class, you know, for the semester and like that kind of stuff. So
oh yeah. So I totally get that. Well, yeah, no, you mentioned your labor of love, which is why we're here, the Mimi
mhm.
Librarian. So I'd like to just get a this that's probably gonna be the bulk of our conversation here. So I kind
Yeah.
of get into how that evolved, like how did that even get started? What was the impetus for that? What did it look like when it first started?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So I started the Mimi Librarian in August of 2018. So it was about a year after I'd been working in libraries, and thinking back to that time, there was just I don't know, it was like it was a really it was a different time for libraries. But I I was I don't know if you remember this. It was like a like alternative uh National Park Service account that popped up around that time period. And it was kind of like in a you know, like anti Donald Trump
Yeah.
account and everything of like this person who worked in the National Park Services, and they were like saying their truth. I thought that was like the coolest thing I'd ever heard. I was like, this is so awesome.
It was bad.
And I was like, what if I did that for my current library, which was I don't know how I even thought of that. Like I don't know why I was thinking in that capacity because my library is there there's issues in the same way that there's like issues with all libraries, but it wasn't like let me expose this you know like big undercover thing like the National Park Service was like that. But I just thought it was cool to have this kind of like alternative like look at a profession, I guess, that wasn't like as you know strict as like the official account needs to be. So I started it with that kind of being the idea, that it would be kind of like a local, like people in Fayetteville where I live would be like, yeah, I know that person. That person is the librarian, and they talk about stuff. And it became very clear within like I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks that it was like, oh, the people that are following me are not all local. So a lot of them are. A lot of them were the people from my library, but a lot of the people that were like discovering it were not local. To even Arkansas, and I was able to after I got like 100 followers, you can like change your account on Instagram to like a business model account, and then when you do that, you can see like where your followers are from, and like you can see like insights and stuff. So I did that, and when I did that, I was like, oh, like a ton of people are from New York, a ton of people are from like Illinois, like there's like all these different people. There's a couple of people that are like in the Netherlands that are following me. I was like, this is bizarre, like this is not what I was expecting. And it became obvious that um, it was not going to be just a local kind of like what I was thinking about my own library, and became like a kind of more of um, a, nationwide. People were following me, and I think part of that was because before I started the page, I would like look up library memes and everything, and they were all like, there were a couple of funny ones, but they were like individuals posting like funny memes. There wasn't like a group of people that I saw, or like a particular poster that I saw that was posting consistently funny memes about libraries. They were all memes that, I don't know, they're like, I like to wear cardigans and like that kind of stuff. Like that was all the library
Like
memes
the
that I
library
saw.
cake, not that one.
Exactly. No, exactly. Like the library cake, but like a lot of them were just like about things. I was like, I don't know. Like there are so many things that connect librarians and library workers that are so much deeper, so much funnier, so much more like interesting than like the fact that we like to wear cardigans, or the fact that a lot of us like cats or something. Like I don't know. It was just such a like, I was like, this is such basic level stuff. And when I was looking around my office of, people that I work with, I was like, these are some of the funniest people that I've ever met. These are some of the, like most passionate people that I've ever met. They are so, they just care, and they're tough, and they really like want what's best, and they really care about what they do. And I was like, I'm not seeing this reflected at all in the library meme world, so that was another thing of like, when I started making memes, I kind of was very anti, like, I'm not going to make a meme about like cardigans or anything like that. I'm not going to make a meme about like this kind of like, cheesy, corny stuff. I want to make a meme about stuff that like, and I want to talk about things that actually like affect the world that we're living in, the library world. And that includes just talking about like the annoying patrons, or the you know book censorship, or like the fun things that we do and everything, because I didn't see that. And once I started the page, there were more people that popped up that do kind of follow suit in a lot of ways, and they have they I'm not going to say they like copy me or anything like that, because they're making their own memes, but they also were like, yes, we're radical librarians, and we're doing this kind of stuff. We're talking about real, actual librarian issues and everything. I don't know. He's offline now. He doesn't, he doesn't have an account anymore because it got shut down. But James Patterson Official was a old meme account. Yeah, library
What
meme account.
happened to that page?
Yeah, so James Patterson Official got kind of too big, because, and with the name of James Patterson Official, unfortunately, branding and using James Patterson's likeness and everything, and branding it in that capacity ended up being the downfall of it, because it got too big, and I guess it was, I don't know, like Instagram will shut stuff down once it gets too big with that type of look and everything. So that was unfortunate, but I really liked the memes that he posted, and he reached out to me after his account got shut down and everything, and he just right now, all I know about him is I think he's working still in libraries. He's still working, but he might decide to start up again. But it was a little bit discouraging to see all his memes, and everything. But he started right around the same time after I started, but like right when I started to take off a little bit more, then they started. And so we were always, we had a lot of the same followers and everything. And so that was kind of a fun thing that was starting a community of library meme pages that were a little bit more radical, a little bit more fun and everything. So it was kind of cool being able to see like more, memes came out of it, more, kind of like awareness that like librarians are fun, librarians are radical, librarians are, interesting people, kind of came out of that and everything. So I think that was a really cool experience. But yeah, it was but the page Meme Librarian has taken off just way more than I anticipated that it would. I never excuse me, I never thought that it would oh, goodness, I'm sorry. I got a little something in my throat. Yeah. I thought that it would probably like taper out at about 10,000 people. That was always kind of my thing. I was like, I doubt that there's like this big of a community of people, but right now I think we're at like almost 17,000 people. I need to check. I don't keep up with it.
I was just gonna look. I know I wanted to talk about that. Yeah, let's see. Where are you at right this very moment? Oh, 16.3.
16.3. Yeah. So that, I mean, it's a lot. It's one of those things I was like, oh my goodness, this is so much more than I thought that there would be and everything. It doesn't seem like it's necessarily super slowing down either. So it's kind of a cool experience to see that kind of take off and everything. So I was like, this it's just a really fun experience to run it and everything. So
yeah, well, I mean, there's just so many things, gosh, I want to touch on with all that, because just seeing the growth, number one, I remember, so back when, I remember, of course, James Patterson, official RIP to that page. And then I'm back at the day. I mean, it was only like Fake Library Stats was like really the main like meme, and they're great. Like, still love them to this day.
Yeah, they're fun.
Were like the only ones at the time that weren't doing like all the cardigan jokes.
Yeah, I think there was a library meme page on, like, it wasn't a page, it was like a group on Facebook, and like people would post their own memes on that. So you had a couple of people like that were posting like kind of fun memes and everything, but it was like individuals posting to a group rather than an individual posting on all of them. I'm sorry, I ate some peanuts right before this and there's something stuck in my throat.
Did you need some water? We can like pause for a minute.
No, it's okay. That was just a mistake to eat that little snack right before this meeting.
That's how it is. In the midst of summer reading, you have to always have
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Oh man. But and also just kind of touching on when you talked about all the growth and all the followers that you've gained, how like much of a uniting force memes can be, and humor, and just bringing us all together.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that I think that touching on like kind of like more serious topics using humor is a really good way of getting people to kind of like put their guard down a little bit and like let themselves be kind of like, well, this is funny and this is like kind of an engaging way of interacting with this topic, whatever it might be, whether it's book censorship or kind of like more serious topics about like diversity in libraries and how we don't have a lot of diversity in libraries and everything. And it lets people kind of like put their guard down a little bit because they're laughing, and then be able to think about it after that. So I think that's a really good way of using humor. I will say the most people that interact with my stuff, they're probably already in agreement with what I'm saying. So they're not necessarily having to put their guard down or think about that. But I think that it does allow kind of like a welcoming space of like, well, why do I think the way that I think? And why do we do the things that we do and everything? And maybe it's worth pondering different ways of approaching a different these topics and everything. So.
Right. And so, yeah, that kind of gets to my next question. So I've been following your account, I think for a little over a year, maybe. And so I've definitely seen, and then I've obviously gone back and looked at older posts, but I've definitely seen in the past year, like just with everything going on, it's there's all the great memes, but there's also a lot more, serious content and
Right.
commentary. So I kind of
Yeah.
want to talk about that and how that's evolved and sort of like the necessity for that conversation. Have you been ever afraid of backlash, whether it's professional or what? How has that been going?
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons why there's kind of a significant tonal shift that happened on the page. The first is obvious that this is just some of the worst book censorship that we have ever seen in this country. And definitely the vibes are very different than how they were 5 6 years ago when I started working in libraries. They are just significantly different, and anyone that works in libraries that has worked longer than that will be able to tell you the same thing. It's this The last couple of years has been just the intensity has just ramped up, and it's just everything is now we're at red alert type of feeling, so talking about it is it's become kind of a necessity for that reason. But then also the uh, Instagram changed a little bit, and they started focusing more on their reels as opposed to their TikTok, to try and like counteract TikToks and everything. And there was a period of time, they're not really doing it anymore because reels have kind of taken they have their foot in the door basically now. But for a while, Instagram was paying certain creators that were like around my size money to make reels and everything. I was like, well, heck, I'll cash in on anything that I can and everything. So I started making a lot more reels for that reason. A lot of the people that I saw that were doing the same thing, and and again, makes total sense why people would um, cash in on that because it's a way of making money and everything. And I made about $200 a month sometimes, um, but they didn't really have anything to say. So my biggest thing was always like, I have to have something to say, but I always had something to say with the book censorship because there's a lot to talk about in that particular everything. So it did kind of shift for a couple of reasons. The world shifted, and Instagram kind of shifted away from like just pictures. I still post a lot of pictures, and they still do very well, but it kind of shifted away from that, and things that were going to go viral tended to be things that were like reels that were made in the Instagram app and everything. So I shifted along with that in mind. But yeah, the biggest thing is that um, we're dealing with a situation of like the book censorship across the country is really bad, and within my own state in Arkansas, it's super bad because we just had a new law that was passed, Act 372, which criminalizes librarians for having books that are deemed obscene in library collection or like accessible to minors. And of course, if it's in the library, then it's accessible to minors because we don't, block off, 18 plus places. Are not like an old school, video store with a back room that people can go to. That's just not how libraries operate. So they're basically wanting certain books completely inaccessible to everybody, not just to minors. But and it's been a mess, and it was been really hard, and that passed earlier this year. So I've had to I know a lot about that particular law. I don't know a lot about like every law that's popped up that's similar to this. So I've talked a lot about that particular, working as a, librarian in a red state that's in the South that has this type of law, because it's like a lot of people are in similar situations. And it just kind of like the necessity is there for like instruction, because a lot of people don't know how bad it's gotten. So even though I still post memes and I try to keep it light sometimes, and I try to talk about and like post memes and talk about the different things that libraries offer. Sometimes like a meme's not really appropriate. Sometimes you have to have like a deeper conversation. And I will use posts and reels to do that when I can. But yeah.
That's so you're doing such important work with that. And I'm also in a ground zero place for that. I'm in Florida. So I I know firsthand. And it's funny because so Bywater is a national company, so we have
Mhm.
people all over. And while this is going on everywhere, it's way more severe in certain places. And so there are some people that just don't understand what's going on in certain places. So
Yeah.
raising awareness of that is just so important.
I
And
honestly think people that are even in this place that it's happening aren't necessarily aware. Like if you're like involved, it's like if you're involved with libraries in any sort of capacity, you're going to be. If you're involved with bookstores in any sort of capacity, you're going to be. But if you're just kind of like a regular person who's like, hey, the world's on fire, and I'm not going to be aware that like the world's on fire in this particular area too. I really think that like a lot of people don't realize how these things affect people. Like they just don't put two and two together. I know that even like my mom, huge library supporter, is absolutely in favor of libraries. She was like, if you didn't work in a library, I wouldn't know half the stuff that's going on. I wouldn't know about Act 317 really, because it's just not talked about nearly as much as it should be in the way that it should be, in just an easy to understand way in in our media and everything. It's just not. So it's a little bit of just getting that awareness out there in any kind of like in any sort of like easy to digest kind of way. Is that's kind of like where we need to be, because most people do agree with the idea of libraries. Most people like libraries, and most people think that libraries should have multiple perspectives on library shelves. But the loud minority is saying that that's not the case, and everything that every sort of like study that's been done says that it is the case, that most people do trust their librarian, do think that multiple perspectives should be on library shelves. But it's one of those things that most people also don't know how bad it's gotten. So that's kind of where my focus has been for the last 6 months or so, is just kind of being aware of like, this is why I care. This is one of those things. This is why you should care too. So
oh, absolutely. And I also really like that you touched on just the algorithm itself, because I want to get into that too,
mhm.
how Instagram has changed. Because I think libraries have really seen it with their accounts. We've seen some amazing content come out of Milwaukee Public. We've seen just this such creative influx of content. But sometimes like I miss the old school Instagram where it was just posting pictures and we
Yeah.
have to be videographers,
I do think there's an element of in general, uh like libraries, this is what I always like tell libraries who are just starting out with their with their social media pages and everything, to like keep in mind like pictures of people or like videos of people are going to do better. So like that's one of the reasons why these Milwaukee Library is a great example. One of the reasons why they do so well is because they like engage the public with like who their librarians are, and they like have a just an interaction in that capacity. So it's really a great way to engage people in that capacity. But yeah, I agree. It's like suddenly now our job is like, I have to think of like a TikTok like based on this kind of like using this popular sound. How can I make this related to libraries in a way that's like creative and fun? And people, I mean, like librarians are incredibly creative people, so that is something that they can do, and it's one of those things. But it's like that's it does put some libraries at a disadvantage who don't have, that's like not where their comfort levels are, like those librarians who don't have the comfort level of like posting a video or lip syncing or dancing to like a particular song or whatever. Like that's when they could just like post a pretty picture and maybe even including their faces doing and being silly or whatever, which used to get good engagement and now just doesn't because of the algorithm. It's kind of a shame that is like these people are also being kind of like left behind in that capacity. um I always try to tell people that's like really what people like to see is the people behind the library. They like to see the librarians. Like librarians, they work with people. They are very much we're a people profession, and I think the public idea of librarians is that we're not. is that we are these like very antisocial, like don't know how to interact with people. And that's not the case. That's just not the way that it works. We do know how to, interact with people because we do it on a daily basis, and we're fun and we're interesting, and people that interact with us like the interactions that happen. So I always try to tell libraries, if they ever ask for advice or anything, that they just highlight that aspect of things. And it could be that you're funny, and it could be that you're creative in some capacity, and that could translate really well to making TikToks and making reels and using that as kind of like a jumping off point. Or it could be, like you are interesting in some other capacity, but there's a reason why people like librarians. They like them because of who you are. So just let that shine through. And I think a lot of libraries, they do a decent job. Most there are some like top tier libraries that are like, wow, you're just knocking out of the park. This is great. And then there's most are like, you're doing a good job. You're doing a decent job. Some libraries could really like amp up their media presence. But that's, it's hard to do. So I get why it is hard to do.
Oh yeah. And like you said, just learning who's behind, that's some of my favorite things too, is seeing, well, yeah, who are the people that work there? That's just been, and it's great for engaging. You can be like, oh, hey, Corey, or whoever, you know what I mean?
Right. No, exactly. It's good for engagement. Or it's like, oh, I went to, so-and-so's, story time the other day and it was great, or this kind of stuff. Like people want to comment that when they see like, oh, you did like an adorable, whatever, dance, or, whatever. People are there. They want to engage with that. They want to be part of their community. I really do think that they're eager to be a part of that. So they like to be proud of their library whenever they see that kind of stuff popping off. So it's great. It's great to see some libraries do that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of interaction, I do want to talk a little bit about, do you have to deal with trolls on your account at all? I mean, I know it's a little, library, it's probably mostly library people, but everybody gets trolls these days. So it just, have you
Yes.
had to deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Well, like I will say like 90 to 95% of the interactions that I have are extraordinarily positive. If they aren't in agreement with me, they will be very respectful. They will, it's like that is a huge majority of the people that I interact with. And I think the fact that that's just, like the community that is already out there, like most people that are like interacting with like library stuff are very respectful people and everything. So I do think that that's just like the type of people that are following the page and everything. I really appreciate that. There are definitely some trolls that have happened, and since I have gotten a little bit bigger, it's gotten significantly more. When I was smaller, it was like literally like maybe one out of every 100 posts would have like a off color comment or something. But now it's, if I post anything that's a little spicy, there's going to be a couple of comments, and it's just the way that it goes. It's one of those things. It's like I think you have to have the right attitude towards the people, and I absolutely love the people that follow me, the people that I have nothing but love for them and everything, but there is an element of, it's like I don't really care what people think about me, because it's one of those things. I can't care what people think, because it's like I don't know you. Like I don't if you like me, great, that's fine. If you don't like me, I don't really care. But because like I don't know, you might have bad taste, it's one of those things. I really don't care. But I think a lot of people don't have that attitude and everything. So I think that it's really difficult when you have an attitude of like you do care how people perceive you and how people think about you, to I think it can be really hard to hear all these comments and see all these comments and just like notice that people are perceiving you. I get sometimes comments on my appearance, and sometimes comments of whatever. Like one time I posted a video, and it was after a take of, I said that I didn't like Elon Musk. It was like someone if you've talked to me for 5 seconds, then I'll probably drop that. I don't like him, and everything. And because I have like the Minecraft librarian as my profile picture, and I have had that for a couple of years, like people were commenting that's like your jawline looks like the mine, like you have a square face like the Minecraft people, and like this kind of stuff. And it's like I found it kind of funny because I was like, oh, okay, so you're just mad that I have a stronger jawline than you. Great, that's awesome, like that kind of, and just like playing it off with that type of thing. But I think a lot of people who are not as confident, I guess, about like how they look or how they're perceived and this kind of stuff would find that very disheartening and very discouraging and everything. So I always tell, it's like, you don't have to listen to anybody. You can always delete everybody. Like, you don't have to interact with people that it's like, you really don't have to, like I do, but you don't have to, like, you don't have to interact with them. And there was a ton of comments that I posted a reel semi recently that got me a ton of followers too. It was a lot of positive, a lot of negative, that compared, that just basically did like a walkthrough of the Nazi Germany, the type of books that they burnt, and then the books that we are currently banning and everything, and how they were very, very similar, covering similar topics. And it's one of those things that's like, it's really easy to dismiss people, dismiss like kind of like, yeah, well, Nazis burned books and everything, but it's like, what books did they burn? What were they against? And it's like, oh wow, it's the same exact type of books that we're having issues with today. And so many people had like they had something to say about that. A lot of it was good, but it's like I think it was like 1,000 comments on that now. I'm not actually sure how many comments there are, but it's like it was one of those things that is just an unreal amount of comments. And that was easily my most shared, most liked reel that I had made. But it had an enormous amount of comments, and a lot of them were people that were like, you're a groomer, you're a pedophile, you're like just talking about that kind of stuff. And then some people were like, I can't believe you think that these books are, should be good, in schools or whatever. And I do try to like engage with people whenever they like, I don't care about being engaging with people when they're calling me groomer and pedophile. It's like, you've already lost the ability for me to like interact with you, because it's just like, whatever, man. Right. But when people are interacting and they're like, I can't believe that you think that, it's like, well, why don't you think that? What books do you have a problem with? Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. And a lot of times that's like the end of the conversation, because they don't want to talk about it further than that. But sometimes there has been interactions that I've had where it's like, I'm not going to say that it changed their mind, but it at least like they ended the conversation with like, this is a lot to think about. Like, I'll go ahead and, like I'll ponder this more and everything. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Like that's exactly why I'm having this conversation with you, because it's like maybe it'll kind of like shift gears a little bit, and just get people to be thinking about it and everything. But yeah, I do have to deal with trolls on the page sometimes, but the reason why I put up with it the amount that I do really has to do with the fact that it's like, I don't think most of these people have people in their life pushing back on their toxic ideas. And I think it is like an important to have people push back on that. And in a space that is, again, like a relatively safe space, in a space where they can maybe be like, maybe I can rethink what I'm doing here and everything. But does that actually happen? It's like, I don't even know if it actually happens, but I think it does sometimes, that like some people have a little bit of a change of heart, or at least kind of like a little bit more of an awareness of like, maybe I shouldn't jump and just automatically agree with this side. Maybe there's something else to be said. But again, huge majority of the interactions that I have are positive, or at the very least respectful. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've definitely looked. The comments are all usually it's a really great supportive space, and you really do an excellent job of engaging the people that are kind of antagonistic and that say annoying things like, what about aren't you going to ban like Mein Kampf, or aren't you going to? And you do a really good job of saying, no, there's a reason, this has cultural significance. Like,
right, just talking it through, I think a lot of times is all you really need. Some people are, there are different like levels that the pro censorship crowd. There's some people who are just like, you can kind of dismiss out of, you can just dismiss how they're talking because they're talking, they're calling people groomers and everything. They're not interested in an actual conversation. And then there are other people who are, what they're really concerned with is like collection development, basically. It's like, this is a great question. We've actually already thought about this. We've actually already have policies that talk about this and everything. So you shouldn't feel like we're just, we're just buying any old book that we think of. We actually do have policies in collection development and everything. I think a lot of people, they don't realize that because there's a nationwide kind of like deliberate effort to dismiss and devalue the profession. And by doing that, a lot of people think like, no one's ever thought of this, thing of like, why can't we allow 50 Shades of Grey in an elementary school library? And it's like, well, because it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in the collection development policy. It's not about whether or not that book should be banned or not. It's about like, it just truly doesn't fit in the collection development policy. And I think that a lot of people, they don't realize that how much work goes into book selection, especially for school libraries and libraries that are like pretty, I'll call them like just like low income. Like we have to think a lot about what books we're putting on the shelf because we don't have a lot of disposable income for that. Like I'm pretty lucky. I work in a library where we can basically buy pretty much any book that if you request it and it fits into our collection development policy, we can buy it. But a lot of libraries are not like that. A lot of libraries have to be very selective. So because they just, like when you can only buy one book a month or whatever, it's like you're not going to just buy whatever. But people they don't think about that. They don't think about how that is like the day in and day out type of attitudes of that. So I do try to bring an awareness of that to my page, and I think it's educated a couple of people at least, so that's helpful. Again, I don't really, I think a lot of people are already in agreement that are interacting with my stuff, but I think it has helped a couple, a group of people kind of feel like, oh, I never considered that. So
Absolutely. A lot of people just don't understand the inner workings. And so that is really important that you bring that up. And it also creates a safe space for people working in libraries that have to, deal with the frontline stuff and can't always necessarily have really honest conversations, or they're confronted by an angry person at the desk or on the phone. And you're kind of caught off guard, like, oh, I don't know, and so it's a space to go to and sort of learn some resources for dealing with that as well.
Absolutely. Because when you talk about it a lot, it gets a lot easier to talk about it with an angry patron, or an angry, I don't know, family member or community member who you don't, you don't know how to like answer some of their claims that they're making, because they're outrageous claims. So you're like, how do I even like respond to this and everything? So I do try to, that is, having an ability to, talk about this and just read about it and everything and see how other people are responding to that can be helpful for sure.
Definitely. So where do you see the Miming Librarian going in the next few years? Do you have any goals or aspirations that you'd like to see, or just continue to keep kicking?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to the Miming Librarian. I don't think about it all that much. Except in the moment of like, what am I going to post? Today I haven't posted a meme in like a week or whatever. I'm going to try and come up with one today and like that kind of stuff. Gosh, I really don't know what the next step is for the Miming Librarian. Other than like for my own personal like library goals, I'm part of the Arkansas Library Association's intellectual committee, intellectual freedom committee. Such a long name, and every time I get mixed up and everything. Intellectual freedom committee, and that was basically because of the Miming Librarian that I got added onto that. Adam Webb, who is like he's kind of a big shot here in Arkansas library world and everything. He follows the Miming Librarian and said, hey, I think you'd be perfect for this committee that we have and everything. So I was able to get added to that for that reason. So I'm just gonna like allow that to continue to kind of happen, and we'll see what happens from there. And hopefully in the next couple of years, it'll be like we can go back and just a little bit more silly stuff, a little bit more fun stuff, and the kind of heavier stuff won't be as prevalent there. I think we have the ability to disrupt what's happening in the current cycle, culture war, ridiculous cycle. I think we have the ability to do that, but if we, hopefully that actually happens, and hopefully we kind of like go back to kind of just like, oh, let's complain about patrons instead of having to deal with like, oh, I might get defunded. I don't like that, so.
That I miss those days sometimes.
I know.
Yeah. Like, make fun of the patrons banging on the door in the morning.
Exactly.
That's wonderful that you're part of that committee now, and I hope that goes well. And I guess I also just want to ask, is there any accounts that we should be following that you want to shout out that are just amazing, that inspire you, that we should be following if we're not already?
Gosh, I'm awful at, on the Librarian, you can see that's like I hardly follow anybody. So a lot of the people that I follow that I get inspiration from I just follow on my personal account. But I'm trying to think of people to shout out. They're not, a lot of them are like, they're not library related and everything. They're just like, funny related, and I bring in that kind of humor into my account whenever I can. Who I really like that I've been interested in the stuff that they're saying now, everyone probably already follows, but Pen America they always have so many awesome like anti-censorship like points and everything, and it's a really cool, I think that's what they're called. It'll be embarrassing if I say something that's not accurate. And America. Yeah, Pen America. And they do a lot of really, really awesome like points about censorship, and they like put out a bunch of surveys and like that kind of stuff, and that's really awesome. But then they also like just talk about they like will interview people. Like today they interviewed Art Spiegelman about how his book Mouse has been removed in library schools, and how he's just getting more concerned with the way that it's amping up and everything. So you get a lot of really interesting things like that. So it's a little bit like of a bit more corporate and everything, like American Library Association adjacent type of stuff, but they really do put out a lot of awesome stuff. So
that's great. I just followed them because I was not.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Well, is there any other final thoughts you have for the podcast before we wrap it up?
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. I always enjoy talking about library. So I will talk everyone's ear off if they let me. So it's always nice to have like a concrete, like, hey, I can do that and get my words out to more than just a couple of people. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Great.
Thank you for being here. This was fabulous. And everybody, if you don't already follow, it's the Memeing Librarian on Instagram. I'm trying to remember if there's underscores or anything.
No underscore, or I think actually, yes, there is an underscore. The underscore Memeing underscore Librarian. And then on Twitter, I'm also on Twitter, but it is just the Memeing Lib. But because they couldn't put my whole name in that. But yes, no, the Memeing Librarian on Instagram. If you type that in, I'm the one that pops up.
I just found your Twitter and I love the little tagline. It made me laugh. I won't say it. I'll let everybody, because it'll be a reason for people to go look at it.
Yes. No.
That's awesome.
I like Twitter. It's fun, but not so much anymore. It's not as fun as it was a couple of years ago. So, but yes, I'm on there. I'm on Instagram, and those are my two socials that I'll use. So,
yes. Well, thank you so much again. Everybody go follow, and stay tuned for the next episode of The Library is Open. We'll see you soon.
Bye.